And I think recruiting at every level, if you can't recruit, you can't win. You have to learn how to recruit.
I will not go below 30 unless the player's an absolute stud as far as work ethic.
We'll congratulate each other and chug some beers if somebody wins a national championship.
If they did, don't you think I'd have 2 championships by now? I might have 3.
Now, I know Cash uses those booster gifts. He's always promising cash and women, right?
I've only been caught twice. I've only been caught twice. That's it.
Those guys crack me up. Welcome, everybody, to another episode of This, That, and the Other. This is episode 1 of season 3. So for all of y'all that have been with us since season 1, when it was actually still a podcast, we appreciate you joining us as this program evolves into bigger and better things. And that's largely in part due to our studio audience that we have with us. As far as being on the broadcast, anybody's welcome to join anytime, usually every other Thursday night, 9 p.m. Eastern time. Normally, we'd go into our panelists for the night and give a brief overview of what we'll be discussing. But tonight, we have a special treat for you. What If Sports has hired a couple new guys that are going to be instrumental in taking that platform to bigger and better and greater things. And I'm really pumped, stoked, excited, what other ways you want to call it, to have these two guys on board. And having spoken with Adam quite a bit, very enthusiastic, very promising. And if he can deliver just a fraction of what his mind has for What If Sports' future, we'll all be better off and we'll all be grateful for it at the outcome. So without further ado, let me go ahead and welcome Adam into the studio. And Adam Lorenz is right here. Adam, say hello.
That is quite an introduction. Crazy. Yeah, thanks for having me on here. I know we've talked a couple times. You helped me pick a school out for the Bryant world and kind of walk me through like that kind of stuff. So a lot of it just comes back to, I've been a What If Sports person since 2015, and this opportunity kind of arose and I jumped at it. So I don't really know kind of the format for tonight. I was excited to kind of, start collaborating with people who care a lot about this product, just like I do. And, I don't know if you have guests lined up or questions lined up or if you're going to grill me, but I'm here for the ride. So awesome.
We're going to have you on, and we're also going to bring Chris on, and he's your cohort in this matter, in this mad world we call What If Sports. And at that point, normally we ask each of our panelists to provide a little insight as to who they are, where they came from, how they got onto What If Sports. In this case, it'll be more of a miniature resume, I guess, since you're just starting off in the world of What If Sports Gridiron Dynasty again. So hopefully that'll be enjoyable to watch, to see you succeed as you progress through it. Let's go ahead and bring Chris on, and then each of you.
I'm not here to learn is really what I'm here to do. Yeah. So, I'm not going to, be taking your guys' reward center points. I just need to know these games so we can make them better. So.
Okay, sure. Well, Chris, welcome to the show, brother. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, thanks, guys. Thanks for having me on. Excited to be here. Let me fix this camera.
No, it was better the other way.
What? Sorry. First week on the job. It's been exciting to finally get going, and been working alongside Adam. We're both very passionate about the games in the What If Sports suite, especially gridiron. I think we have a lot of great ideas for the future and what these products can become. I'm really excited. I come from a simulation background. It's basically what I've done most of my career. Worked for the Department of Defense the past 5 years, working on war games and simulations. But when this opportunity arose, I had to reach out and find more information about it, and got to speak with Adam. Him coming on the team around the same time as me. We're both new. I think we're going to bring some fresh and innovative ideas, and I'm really excited to get started.
Well, I tell you, we are, as a group, glad to have you on board. Any type of face that we can put with the name is really special. It lends to the credibility as well as the reality of the fact that there is somebody there. It's not just a computer bot. And many people thought that was what Scott was, or Sebel was just a bot that occasionally popped up from time to time. But I know he was working hard in the background. Not everybody knew what he was involved with, but if you can imagine trying to set your one team up in one world and the difficulties you would experience, imagine trying to be him and handle so many worlds and so many sports in so many ways with so many people. I'm surprised he's not in a nut house, to be honest with you.
It's true.
This guy. Well, guys, go ahead.
Coming on site and, just starting to, I came on part-time at the beginning of the month and just trying to get up to speed on everything that he does on a day-to-day basis. Because, I know that, with the community, a lot of it, and being in this community myself, for the last 5 years in the Hoops Dynasty world, one of the things that everyone's kind of clamoring for is, when's the next change going to come? When's the next update going to come? And when you talk about, the amount of support that goes into all of these games. And that's one of the things that not really to damper expectations or excitement around us. That's one of the things that I think that Chris and I are going to out the gate while we're, learning, the rest of the product suite and all that we're trying to do is drop that operational footprint. And just for an idea, we get close to, about 70 to 100 support tickets weekly, every 7 days. And you're talking about things that you have Shannon and Samantha who, sit back there and try their best, but they're not, they're sports hub technology experts, not just what if sports experts. And so they can handle, a decent percentage of the tickets. But when it comes down to some of the stuff that's a little bit more technical around that people ask or switching rosters and that kind of stuff, they're ramping up. But, a lot of it takes time away from Scott. And then that doesn't even touch some of the stuff that comes from the day-to-day of, this being a older suite. I typically, my goal for the short term is really to try and shoulder some of that for Chris so that he can actually develop and do fun things. And then he's going to work on things that are going to tighten that up. There's games like Hardball Dynasty where we'll have anywhere from 2 to 8 games a night that don't simulate. And imagine if you're in a gridiron world and it's because your rosters aren't set exactly correctly, or it doesn't force you to do that resiliency is not built into the application. So we're having to go in every morning and spend, an hour or two correcting these, because you can think about the impact that would have on not only your team, but also the other teams playing in that region, if your games aren't simulating. And so
crazy.
Our first 3 to 6 months is really going to be what can we do to really learn the product line and then also drop it so that when we do ramp up and we start building our customers back up, that we can support it. Because I would be honest with you guys, if we were to ramp up and go back to the days that I've heard where the Gridiron Hoops Dynasty worlds were sitting at 80% capacity, I don't think we'd have the support staff to support that right now. You're talking about, that at that point, doubling and tripling support tickets. So there's a lot of that operational stuff. And that's why, for me, I know there's a little bit of, discourse around the lack of change or the lack of growth in these games over the last couple of years. I know that I felt it myself, these games could be so much bigger if we actually, marketed them and helped the people out. And it's just there isn't a, the ability to do so. Cause when Sable is, taking 80 to 90% of his time dealing with operational stuff, it's just, you're not going to be able to develop new products or features or any of that kind of stuff.
Yeah. That to me, it just seems it needs to be compartmentalized, but you never get to all the compartments. It's you've got all these little baskets, and just when you think you've got time at the end of the day to tackle another one, lo and behold, it's the next week already. It's just so busy. Well, as far as the format goes for tonight, I've got no pre-scripted questions, no hypotheticals. I'm not going to bombard you guys with any of the, y'all need to do this and get rid of this and add this. And
roast job, I was hoping.
Well, what we're going to do is, in no particular order, I'm going to try to bring guys on one by one and let you guys field any questions or comments. And for our guests tonight, because we do have quite a few, I encourage you to pick one of your best questions or comments or concerns and address that. And then hopefully we'll get a chance to filter through all of our guests and maybe get a chance to go, 2 or 3 rounds rather than have one guest pose 2 or 3 questions or scenarios, and then somebody doesn't get a chance to put their question up. So we're going to go ahead with the guy right now. I want to bring him on, and I'm going to jump off the video aspect of it. I'll be in the background, but the guy that I'm about to bring on right now, if you want to know how to sign a class within a second after signing period starts, this guy is the guy to ask. I mean, it never fails, no matter what world, at what level. When signing period starts, you know, my computer flashes. It looks like New Year's Eve out there or something. It says, lo and behold, jhunterz has signed his class already. Daryl, welcome to the show, brother.
I think I got you muted right now.
There we go. How's that?
I can hear you now.
All righty. Nice to meet you guys.
Nice to meet you.
Welcome to the Wiz. So like I said, I mean, you guys are going to be across the whole platforms and everything. Is there, just curious, is there a certain order you guys are going in? Is it, you know, I mean, how do you pick which one to attain first?
Yeah, and I was trying to touch this, you know, a little bit in my introduction, is like this being such a massive portfolio of games, and even like look at Gridiron itself. If it's anything like, I'm learning Gridiron myself, but if it's anything like Hoops Dynasty, every division is a game in itself and has its own ecosystem and its own balance. And so, you know, I can't declaratively say what we're going to be working on first. I know that we have an idea of plans that we're looking at, but for us to even come up with concrete plans, we really need to understand the portfolio. And I think it would be foolish for us to say like, yo, Sim League gets to go first if we don't really understand what the needs are for that league. We don't really understand like what their problems and their pain points are. And that's why, you know, I'm trying to get around to, you know, some of the, you know, veteran people in these groups. And, you know, it's only been a couple of weeks, so I haven't even touched, you know, the tip of the iceberg of who I want to talk to. But I think that if we get to a point where we can understand what the needs are and what the user bases used to look like, the questions that I'm asking myself right now is that, you know, we had these worlds that were 80% full, and we had these, you know, what happened in these worlds that caused these people not to come back, and why are we not able to, you know, we ran a, you know, promotional event back in March and April. Why do we have all these, do we have an influx of new users come in that didn't stay? And those are some of the really like sticking questions I'm trying to ask as I learn these things. Cause, you know, I blew one of my my first run at the playoffs in Lehigh last night because, you know, I didn't understand the hierarchy of like, you know, game planning, playbook formations was like really the hierarchy. But like, how as a new player do I know that without like picking someone's brain, like going to someone that's a game planning master, or going to the forums and reading a, you know, 15-page document on how to play Gridiron. You know, if I come from Blizzard Entertainment, and, you know, we do games like World of Warcraft, and we build tutorials into our games so that when you start playing the games, by the time you're done with the tutorial, then you understand how a lot of the baseline concepts of the game, you know, that kind of stuff. So
right.
I didn't mean to bogart that question from you, Chris, but I know we talked about that a little bit.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, basically, just to piggyback with what Adam said initially from out the gate, I think our primary focus is going to be the operational footprint and doing some things in-house to alleviate some tickets. So like he said, one of the things, Hardball Dynasty, with games not simming, it's just simple, you know, lineups aren't being set. And granted, it's a little bit more, there's a little bit more focus in those games towards lineups as things evolve on a day-to-day basis. You have to manage your whole minor leagues, and then spring training comes around and your roster grows, then it shrinks. But there's a lot of things we can do with that game to alleviate that, so we're not getting 100 tickets a week on, you know, simple fixes. And then in terms of just the technology itself, as you guys know, it's pretty much hasn't changed drastically in many years. So as you can imagine, the business logic and a lot of the technology it's built on is also dated as well, which obviously has some pros and cons, right? I mean, obviously it's done a lot of great things previously, but the issue becomes when trying to augment it and build on top of it it becomes a little bit more difficult with older technologies, vice building on something new today, and trying to support all those games that are all on completely different technology generations. Basically, there's some stuff from the early 2000s, some stuff that was built more recently in the last couple of years. So even to set up my development environment here, it's a multiple day effort just to set up to be able to develop these games. So
I think the biggest concern with guys, at least in GD, that, in the past, they felt like, things have been asked of them, what they would like to see and things of that nature. And it's tried to be implemented in it. But sometimes their concern is it getting changed so much that then it just ruins the game or completely changes it. And then it's, basically learn over. And, because version 1, it was all run, and then it went to all pass, and people are trying to find a balance, and you got people that complain about the run game's gone, everybody just goes all pass now or medium pass, and they feel it's kind of cookie cutter and they're wanting some changes and things. But I think, like I said, it is the biggest concern is people being concerned with a change being made. And I think it was already been put in the forums that a couple people have complained that, so they've already done something, they've messed with something, and I lost already, and I shouldn't have lost. And
I mean, I can we haven't changed any engines since about 2019. So
anytime anybody's brought in new, that's what they think is that you guys are going in there and secretly putting stuff in just to kind of hey, let's see if they catch this, and it is what it is.
And I think you hit an important thing. Like, we're trying to, be open and transparent with what we're going to do. I think, we obviously want to make this as balanced and fun of a, experience for everyone as possible without, giving away like the secret sauce of like, I think one of the problems I see with Gridiron off the bat is like that, I read one of the, the forum posts about how to recruit, and there's only like, if you're min-maxing the game, there's only 2 recruiting actions that have any value. Like, really, if you're going to min-max the game, like, that's not a good balanced experience for gameplay or game design. Is that there should be multiple ways to do things. I mean, and I'm not like saying that we're going to, change it to the way Hoops does recruiting, but if you go to the forums, there's 3 or 4 different ways that people recruit. I mean, I know all of that. And so like, it goes to the same things like, how do we build that into the game without changing what the game is and alienating people that are currently playing? Because you guys are our valued player base, but also make the game more dynamic so that there's more ways to do one thing. And that would include like anything from recruiting to game planning to, setting your rosters to, redshirting to manipulating your rosters, that kind of stuff. So it's not just, everyone ends up doing the same thing over and over and over. Because I think that's how you get a little bit of the churn in the game when it doesn't change and there's not really, but it also creates an interesting, dilemma for us as a game designer as well. It's because you don't want to change things quickly, because if we change things quickly, you guys have recruited 3 classes based off of the previous iteration of the game. Mm-hmm. And so if I change all of a sudden the value of something and, you've been building this team that's supposed to be spread the field out and pass it, and I change it so that your offensive line isn't as strong, you're getting sacked every play, like I just wasted 3 years of your season. So like any changes we make are going to be very thoughtful. We're going to try and, do that kind of stuff. But I mean, like we don't have a plan for, any of that stuff at this point, but I do want to reassure you guys, like, we're not going to make like rash decisions. The sim engine's still the same engine that is going to screw you over some nights. It does. I mean, coming from the What If community, I've been screwed by that sim engine multiple times. So, I mean, I'm with you guys in that. Like, it doesn't feel good, but I do want to give you guys some semblance of reassurance that like we're not coming in to, destroy everything or ruin. I said to someone the other day, we're going to ruin the game, like, as a joke. So.
Man. Well, Daryl, we're going to kick you back into the waiting room there and let these guys have a chance to talk with none other than our buddy, Bob Hazelwood. Now, I know that I've talked quite a bit to Adam regarding the Gridiron or GD reports, as it's called. And Bob is the master originator of that and the caretaker of that. And it's been around for, forever it seems like. And I know he and a few of his cohorts back in the day really taught me a lot when they put that together to see just how screwy my recruiting actually was. So, Bob, welcome to the show. And if you have any questions or comments or concerns, well, now is your chance. These are the guys.
Thanks, Magic. And welcome, guys. I appreciate your transparency and willingness to come on with us and provide some insight into the backgrounds and what's going on there. I have two questions, one for Chris and one for Adam. To Chris, as a guy who's done some programming, I know how difficult it can be to keep track of my own code, much less try to decipher snippets of 10 or 12 different development teams' codes. When you're looking at the different products, how different is, say, the coding structure from Hardball Dynasty to Gridiron Dynasty to Hoops Dynasty? I know the sim games would be totally different altogether, but given that different development teams work on things and different programmers have different levels of commenting their code, how difficult is it for you coming in to dig into this spaghetti bowl of codes?
Yeah, it's been a little bit different. Obviously, Scott Ebel, the developer now, has been awesome. He's been very very useful in helping me onboard the knowledge base, documenting everything very well. As far as some of the code base, I think he probably hasn't even got to some of it recently, and it's been turnover from previous development staff. But as you can see going through, it's, there's bits and pieces that are drastically different, and you can tell either not just the level of developer, but you can tell altogether that I was a completely different developer. And then getting back to the technology difference, even within in the multiple dynasties, there's different, I guess, frameworks for development as well. So some still running on classic ASP, and some have been more recently modified a little bit to more modern technologies. But it's going to be something we're going to be looking at going forward in terms of how we plan on augmenting these games going forward, in terms of the potential for, microservices and building things out that are a little bit more dynamic and more modern, so that we can hopefully in some games it might make sense to share certain aspects. And right now the game is so coupled, it's not really modular. There's not certain, logic aspects you can pull from one game to another. So that's going to be the big picture going forward, is how we can improve the whole suite altogether, if possible.
Perfect. Cool. Adam, for you, I know that you mentioned in one of the forum posts that Scott had a to-do list of things that he wanted to implement in the various games. Can you give us an idea of how big that to-do list is and how much value there is in it? Because like you said, some of those suggestions are years and years old. So how much value is there in that to-do list as a roadmap going forward?
So, you're an application developer, you're a developer yourself, you said. And so like typically the way it's worked since it's come over to Sports Hub is we've used a Kanban philosophy. So we have a Kanban board. Typically it's, if people aren't familiar with that, you basically have different stages of where it is. Things originally start in a backlog, and then they move into like in development. After in development, they'll move into test, and then they'll move into, staging and then production. And you guys slide them across like almost as note cards. For an idea of how big that is, we're talking about over 500 items in our backlog. And we're not even talking about like epics or super epics in terms of like modules. We're talking about like either bug fixes, adding statistics, that kind of stuff as well. So he also had his own roadmap of what he wanted to do if he ever had gotten more than, 5 minutes to actually develop. And that's something that he went over with, Chris and I, this week. I think it was actually yesterday. And it's one of those things that like, there's a lot of value in there. I think it shows a lot of like, what have been tickets that have come in, or, thing nice to haves. There's an ongoing ticket since I've started, around like end game logic and Gridiron, because like, I think one of them was that someone had gotten an interception, on the opponent's, 13-yard line with 13 seconds to go. They ran a run play and had 2 timeouts, didn't call timeout, and the clock ran out in the half. The user wasn't particularly happy about it, but said it didn't cost him the game, but he just wanted to like voice it to us. And it's just one of those things that like, There's some just general logic stuff that goes into there. So like there's things that are valuable like that. But then when you start talking about the bigger roadmap of things, I've seen it in someone's, one of the posts even today that like, job logic around Gridiron and Hoops Dynasty are basically tied together the way the job logic works together. And that was one of the things that was like on Sable's, short list of things that he wanted to work on. The things that we have to look at is, that Chris touched on a little bit, is that when you're dealing with like a code base as old as it is, are you better off improving things modularly? Like, are we better off going into the job logic and fixing that first and piecemealing this thing together? Or are we better off just updating this, the whole entire foundation from the bottom up? Like that's kind of where I debate on it is. And that's one of the things that we're having to do an assessment on. I mean, like Chris had said, he started on Monday and he's not with us, full time yet, but he will be soon. But he got his system up and running into dev, I think today. So it's been a 4-day process. So like when you ask him a question about the code repository, it's like today's the first day he actually, I think, got in there 100%. Am I right in that, Chris?
Yeah.
So, I think it's, the more we dig in there and the deeper we get in the woods, the better the idea we're going to have. That's kind of why I try to set expectations to you guys that like, although we're just as excited as you are to start building and adding to these games. We have to, try and take a measured approach with it as well, that, we do have a learning curve coming up on this, So I'm trying to be as honest and transparent with you guys. It's just that like right now we have such a long ways to go before we can say, hey, we're going to start doing this, and maybe we come on the show, in a bit and can demo stuff for you. Like, I mean, that's the kind of stuff I'd like to do with you guys and show you guys what we're working on, so that you guys aren't just sitting there, blankly looking at us and seeing a post in the forum saying, hey, we're going to work on this, and then 3 years pass and nothing's changed. So.
Good deal. Adam, thanks for that. I know that was a lot of good insight from me as well. Bob, hang around, brother. I'm going to kick you back over to the waiting room, but
perfect.
Hang around.
Thanks, and welcome to the frying pan, guys.
Thanks.
I'm going to bring a guy on now who I have no clue who he is.
Cool.
He doesn't have his camera connected, but we're going to add him to the stream and listen to his question. And, his name is FW, forgive me, Kekionga. So let's see if I got that right. Can you hear me there, FW? Have you unmuted? Oh, now we got it.
Howdy.
There we go. So welcome to the show, first and foremost. Thanks for tuning in. Normally we get names that I know what the hell they are. In this case, I'm lost.
Yeah, I do mostly Hoops Dynasty and some Hardball Dynasty. So those are my bags. But I did have a couple questions. So I know you guys, like the blogs on the baseball games are a big part of that for a lot of those worlds, but those are third-party IP, going to Blogger and that sort of thing. Do you plan on supporting those in the future, or are you going to try and maybe create some sort of internal, social part of WIS so people can, add extra content to the games? I love my sim players. I want to tout their Hall of Fame, specifics, so that way I can get people to vote them in.
Yeah, so I've met with a couple people that keep these blogs up, and I think it's one of the things I called for when I made my introduction post, that I like seeing the content people create and all of that. Ultimately, we'd love to give you guys the tools to build those things out within our own site. Obviously, with where we're at right now, that's not possible. So yeah. I'm all about supporting you guys. I've played on other platforms too. You talk about, fantasy football, playing on Yahoo. Like, I used to keep a power rankings with all of my buddies, and every week, write like a 5,000 word power ranking thing. And it's just, it's the things that give like your league's character. And it's why, I describe this stuff to, my girlfriend, and she looks at me like I'm insane that I have fake players that I'm so passionate about. And that I alluded to this earlier, that I've, lose games. I lost a first round tournament game in hoops, I think it was like a week ago now. And if you get me talking about it, I'll get angry again. But, it's just, I think that any of those things that you can do to build community around the world that you're in, there's, the Sim League guys, or not Sim League, the Hardball Dynasty guys do that with their blogs. They do their Hall of Fame. I've seen articles about trying to help, people have gone in and tried to do war calculations, because we don't have it on the site right now, for their hardball teams, because they want to be able to build a case for why that player should be in the Hall of Fame. And then they find that, when they do that kind of stuff and, like make their recommendations on who should go to the Hall of Fame, that they end up getting a higher turnout for the vote.
Yeah.
And I think that that's the kind of stuff that like drives engagement. So I don't know the answer to that question right now. You might get that answer a lot from me tonight, is I don't know right now, but I definitely want to find a way to feature those blogs and those third-party content, because people who have dedicated extra time to What If Sports over their lives are definitely things that we want to continue to grow and foster in our community.
Yeah, and one more thing before I get bumped to the next person. Is it possible, to put on your punch list, being able to have sim teams so you can what if your past, so if I want to put season 98 Elmhurst D3 and IBA and have a what if simulation against another world's team, so you could kind of do like a one-off exhibition thing to see really who is the best, I'd be down with that.
I think that's how What If started, right? That was really one of the original things about What If Sports, is comparing teams that were 20 years ago.
Yeah, there's so much history now on all the worlds going back, and I know that there's a certain point where the stats aren't kept, but I know that a lot of the rosters, those do exist somewhere in the database. And not that you guys don't have enough work, but that would be really freaking cool if you could do that. Just saying.
Yeah, I think it's something that Chris mentioned. He had mentioned in the, and it maybe wasn't exactly in that same standpoint, but it was taking these cross-world teams and playing against each other, do we look at a tournament of champions in Hoops Dynasty, where the champions all get into a tournament bracket with each other for the year, and it's just a gigantic thing. I don't know if the framework exists for that, but it's definitely the stuff that gets our brains thinking. And it's definitely the conversations I've had, with the especially EBA, because that's how I definitely recognize you. I think you've messaged before about recruiting, and it's one of those things that with eBay, there's so much variance in your teams, and it's would my team that won in 96 beat my team that won in 92? Run your teams against each other, or run them against other teams. You see, I think Grand Canyon just won this year. How would my team 20 years ago stack up against this team, whether it's in the sim matchup tab or if it's in another thing just to run those simulations? I think that is cool stuff, and it even takes the what if to the what if level, of the game. So, anyways,
I'd be hyped for that. Pretty cool. So,
hey,
thank you and welcome aboard. I'm just excited to see some action on the site after a while. And excited to have you guys.
Thanks.
Yeah, I think you're going to see that's a common thread through anybody that either comes on this show or has some type of input on the message boards, is they're excited to see actual life for across the board. But before we put you back into the waiting room, how bad did I butcher that name?
Oh no, it's so FW Kikianga. Fort Wayne Kikianga is one of the original baseball teams. First professional baseball game ever played against the Cincinnati Reds was also with Fort Wayne, who lost, and then they folded the following year. But that's my hometown, so I got to represent. So,
well, there you go. Well, we're gonna move from baseball to football and punch you back into the waiting room.
Thanks, man.
Sit there for a while. Hopefully, I'm thinking we'll be able to get some second time through here. So be thinking of something else. And coming on now is a gentleman who I don't know who he is. It says devices are not connected, and that is benis. So I'm going to see if we can bring him on, and maybe he can get that microphone. No, can't get him on. So we're going to move to Sportosaurus. Did I get that right? And Sportosaurus is stage shy. He just left as soon as we brought him up onto the into the stream. So he basically just hauled on us. I noticed we had a couple other guys in here earlier as well. Maybe they'll come back. But until they do come back, I'm going to just go ahead and do a free-for-all for you guys and unmute everybody, and they can take their turn and ask any follow-up or secondary questions that they may have. So you guys ready? Let's roll with some questions for Chris, some hard ones. What do you got there, Daryl? Anything good?
Well, I've kind of posted something in the forums as far as for GD. The ability, like I said, I stay usually at 1AA. I don't venture up into 1A too awful much. My biggest problem with that is everybody's fighting to get to an elite. Mm-hmm. My problem with that is that you have coaches that do well at a BCF school, and once they get to where they've done so well, or even possibly win a national championship, then they'll quit and they'll sit and wait until an elite opens. My problem with that is that you got other guys such as me or somebody else that is not as good as those guys. We're sitting there playing, and our resume may stay the same or, fluctuate up and down a little bit. And then you got, when an elite opens, we think we have a chance. One of these better coaches or, however you want to say it, got, whenever he quit, his resume was good because he quit when he won a national championship or played for a national championship. He comes back in, swoops and takes it back. Or you might even have a guy that's, a great coach that played, seasons and seasons ago, and then now comes back and he just jumps right back into an elite. Whereas you got somebody that's been playing for the last, 20 seasons and gets overpassed for it. I mean, I understand the other coaches have done better and had better resumes, but they get overpassed because somebody, it's a crapshoot. You think you've got a great resume and you think you have a chance, and then next thing you know, Crave Dog comes back or Slider, comes back, and they jump right back into an elite. To me, I would like to see that change to where somebody that has been continuing to play and is taking a chance each season by their resume going up and down, as long as they're consistently good, that they have an opportunity to make it to an elite, because that's what everybody's trying to do, basically. So that's my argument as far as why I don't like to play 1A, other than, of course, everybody else's, the elite advantage, no playoff system, things of that nature, which, everybody will probably go into that as you've already seen and heard. So I won't go there, but that's my thing, is just having a fair shot at an elite if you've stayed in the game and have continued to play, over somebody that basically does well and then gets out and waits. To me, that's kind of a gray, shady area that I would like to see addressed myself.
Yeah, for sure. I think that's one of the first things me and Adam talked about, especially for Gridiron, is, applying for positions, being evaluated, but then also retaining the positions, and how all that logic is built in is a little bit different than some of the other games. And that's probably one of the things we really want to look at, especially with Gridiron. And then also we have sometimes coaches decide to stay in Division 3 and just beat the crap out of everyone too. So it's trying to figure out, engage the best way to go about, that logic, and should we be more strict on who can hold what positions? Would there be any negative aspects of staying in a little league for a long period of time? Or for beginners, are they going to be the only ones able to go into Division 3 and you automatically have to move up after a few years? Certain things like that we're starting to try to think about, for the next iteration. And those are what we see as some of the larger issues with Gridiron, is some of just that logic built in. And then as well as just how long it takes to climb the ladder if you really want to. Because a lot of people coming in, like you said, they want to go towards those elite schools. They might want to play at the Division 1 level or coach. And is it going to take them 12 years to get there? So it's just things to evaluate. But definitely, Adam probably can speak a little bit more. His mind was racing during that conversation we were having. So,
yeah. So, I mean, there's a couple ways you can solve that. I mean, one being the elite status in general. Me being, I was born in Nebraska. I'm a Nebraska football fan. It's a sad life. But if you were to rewind back to when, Gridiron was written, Nebraska is an elite school. They're not anymore.
Right.
Tier. So we'll move forward from there. But that's one of the things you can talk about. Like, if you're at a big major school and you don't win, say you don't make, a BCS bowl for, 8 seasons, are you really an elite school at that point? Like, do you then have an X amount of elite schools that, are considered elite, and it's the schools that have a higher prestige, they grab those from those schools and now they get the advantage. And so that's one way to solve it. The other way to solve it is kind of, you start talking about what Chris said, with, the criteria for coaching. Potentially, right now there's one criteria to hire a coach, potentially based on the school, or we could have it randomized by profiles. Like, potentially schools could be looking for different stuff. And I think that makes it a little bit more fun in the sense that, like in real life, you look at like some of the NFL, trends lately that they're going to younger upstart coaches. Some schools go with safe hires and want someone with, 40 years experience and doing the same thing over and over that's proven. Some people are going for the edgier hires. So potentially build some profiles in where, say, Alabama misses the cut for 4 years and the coach gets canned. Potentially it grabs a random profile of what they want to hire for that time. And when all the applicants come in, you can have it adjust accordingly to how they want to hire that time around. And maybe it's not the same every time. So that maybe, it is what do they want to hire this time? So it isn't so straightforward. And I think that's like one of the things that I find with the games, since they haven't been changed for so long, is that like to a certain extent, I don't want to say perfectly, the games have been solved to a certain extent. I don't want to say because you're going to get variance in it, but there's definitely systems that work and things that you can do to, adjust the simulation to be more in your favor. Because ultimately you still need the sim engine to play the scenario out, and you can get, that 20% outcome if you're favored and lose a game. And that still will drive you insane. But I think that's also why people keep coming back too, is that they don't know for sure if they're going to win that game or not. So,
yeah. All right. Thanks.
I know that one of the reasons when I first started playing, I had a pretty decent first year and then totally bomb crapped the second year I started playing. And I think part of the reason we don't have better user retention, especially when, like you said, you guys gave out free seasons back in March and April, and we had this big influx of users and they all dumped right after the first year. The lack of tutorials and the steep learning curve on the game. I appreciate the fact that you have to get some expertise at the game to be good at it, and that's the way it should be. But it almost expects you to come in and be an expert from the get-go. And that lack of working tutorials and that lack, maybe a tutorial world or begin rather than, when they dumbed down D3, when they took the game planning aspects and things out of Division 3 a couple of years ago in an effort to make it simpler for newcomers, I think they sort of missed the boat on the way to approach it. I do think we need some method of easing folks into the game. And back when the worlds were 80% full, that was other users. The reason I stayed around was because one of the guys saw I was having a problem and reached out to me and said, "Hey, let me give you some help with this if you're willing to listen." Whereas with the worlds being empty, there's still a lot of friendly competitiveness in the game and folks that will tutor other folks, but it's not like it was back in the old days, just simply because the population's not there.
No, and I agree with you. And I think one of the things I've talked about, and I've had this conversation with a bunch of people already, is, coming from Blizzard, our motto is games should be easy to learn, hard to master. So then when you talk about the nuance in these games, like the hardest part for me, and if you want to, talk about, my frustrations being this is my second full season I've ever done a gridiron. I did one a long time ago, and now I've done my second season, is how the hell am I supposed to know what a good player looks like at each position? And, you talk about kickers and punters. Right. I'm supposed to recruit kickers and punters that are high in strength. How am I supposed to even, logic that out in my head? And when you say, well, that's kick power, it's like, okay, well, that makes sense. But how would I know that unless I went to the forums or I went to, your site and figured that out myself?
Right.
And then that's the thing is like, you talk about, when we talk about iterating on this game, like, one of the big things is, I come from a background, like, playing games growing up, playing like Madden football or playing NCAA 2014, since that game has been, run down. And you talk about all the attributes that your players had, is that there were attributes for kick power, kick accuracy. So if you were recruiting a kicker, they'd have high kick power, kick accuracy. Also, I've heard that there's some semblance of system you can do where you can transition underclassmen quarterbacks into kickers and punters, and this works because of how their ratings work out. And like, in what world would a quarterback that you recruited that came to your school ever be okay going to special teams and being your kicker? And that's like the thing, like for me, like that's something that's built into the game and something that like the veterans know, but like how would you know that as a, and it turns out they make better kickers sometimes than actually recruiting a kicker. So you're probably just better off sometimes recruiting multiple quarterbacks, seeing how they pan out, and then converting a freshman or a sophomore that way. So it's just stuff like that like, I have a million examples of this in Hoops Dynasty, that I could do. And I'm learning this stuff, and I'm having conversations to learn this stuff from you guys. And I love having these conversations. I've, told people that this is really blurring the lines for work and personal pleasure for me, because I just enjoy talking what if sports and doing this. I was already doing this on my own with my friends, and in Hoops Dynasty, breaking down text message trains about how you're going to improve or game planning or that kind of stuff. And it's just stuff that I get passionate about already. It's just easy to come in every day with a smile and look at this stuff. And I just want to make this game better because I believe in it. And it's just how do we make that new user experience better? And I don't know the answer to that right now, but I'm definitely while I'm going through the journey of Gridiron, trying to figure out what do we do to make this game more approachable for new users without alienating our current base? Because you guys are the ones that essentially for the last, 10 years since the game hasn't had a whole lot of change, kept the lights on. So, I'm not saying that nothing is going to change. I can't say that. I know there's concern that I'm going to ruin the game, but things will eventually have to change at some point. But we're going to be mindful of it. We're going to talk to, the community. You guys have a lot of, great ideas already. That thread you guys have going in both the HD and the, Gridiron forum about what are the priorities, things that you would like to see change for the new team. I've been in there. I've read most of them. There was one suggestion about cheerleaders I think I saw somewhere.
Mojo.
So,
You can take anything Mojo posts and pretty much go, yeah.
I made it on.
Am I on?
Yeah.
All right.
I just wanted to throw benis. Am I saying that right? Benis?
It's a common mistake. It's benis.
See? I knew I should have went with my dirty mind.
I actually it's shortened. It's a long story. I won't go into details of how I got the nickname, but
you had to throw long in there, didn't you?
Well, no, it's a play on words. It's short for pig penis. You get it?
There you go. We learn something every day, fellas. Well, I'm glad you got your audio and your video issues worked out.
Yeah, I had to go to that. I was listening on my phone. I was hanging out, watching the Syracuse game. Go Cuse. So I want to pop on and say, welcome, guys. I already sent in a message to Adam, I don't know, a week ago or so.
Yeah.
Welcome aboard, and it's all good. Sounds like you guys are.
Don't hesitate.
If you have any questions, go for it, man. We're trying to answer the best we can right now. I'm probably going to be hoops related.
I don't have any. You guys sound like you know what you're doing. I don't know.
Just give us some time. This isn't going to happen overnight, but I definitely appreciate you hopping on. I appreciate your message as well, and I've seen you definitely all over the HD boards for a long time. I haven't been much of a contributor myself, but I like to watch.
Yeah, I like to talk. Yeah, I like the boards are fun, and I'm kind of a dick on there, so yeah, you gotta spice it up a little bit.
I'm good as long as we're not doing personal attacks. We're good, man. I like a good hearty debate,
Yeah. I don't know if I have any. I don't have any questions or anything really, other than I don't know. What do you guys want to do? Here's my opinion. I didn't feel like there was much long-term vision with what if sports, or even with some of the games. It's kind of just treading water. It felt like for a long time. So what is your vision? This is your job. This is something you guys are gonna try to create. So what do you picture this to be?
I'll let Chris go first since I've talked a whole ton today. So I'll shut up.
He said Chris go.
Well, it's a tough question, but a good one, right? So I think first is to make sure that we keep things on an even playing field now, and I think just trying to build and grow the apps out as much as possible. And And whether that's building completely new versions of it that are building upon already great logic and great experience, and making sure that the users we have now stay happy and stay on, while trying to attract some other people to come on and play, and developing that good user experience, especially their first experience. As Adam pointed out, just the trouble with retaining new users that might not be able to pick it up quickly is definitely an issue with these products. And I think, building upon that, it's only going to be more fun for everyone. And I know sometimes people are reluctant to change, or if there's a massive amount of people coming on or things like that. And I don't think that'll happen overnight, number one. But number two, it's going to make ultimately all the products better the more users that come on and play. When these worlds are 80, 90% full, it's going to be a lot more fun than going up against, sim AIs and things like that. And then as well, just modernizing the technology, making it more user-friendly, making it faster, maybe some added features. Adam and I got a little bit of insights for some of the Sim League stuff previously, they had like a live version, which you actually could make decisions play by play rather than at the half or before the games. So, and apparently they had built something in to do that with Gridiron as well. So I think, investigating some of those things in the future, and, I could definitely see people being, pretty interested to, even just on exhibitions on the side, go and do play-by-play simulations and actually make play calls and things like that. I think that'd be pretty cool. So, I mean, obviously, like Adam said, there's a huge backlog of things that have been suggested previously. And I think it's considering which of those are probably our best bets going forward, getting, user feedback now, and then just building the products out to the best of our abilities going forward in the right way. We want to make sure that, years down the road, development staff and program management staff, it's just a streamline, adding on new features and making the products better and better, rather than trying to play catch up and deal with troubleshooting tickets, bugs, things like that. So that's the plan going forward, at least from my side.
Well, yeah, to piggyback off of his question, the opportunity exists. Like, I don't know about the other platforms, but here in Gridiron Dynasty, for a while, way back when, we had councils, and select a few individuals had direct exchanges with the What If Sports staff regarding the gameplay and other suggestions. But they were also used to test and do some of the quality control aspect of the recently developed software changes to the program. Are there any thoughts into developing something like that, or getting a group of users to maybe have a secret world, for lack of a better term? And now I know that in the past that raised a lot of issues about these guys have all the tricks. It's not fair, but it's just a question of getting some time to actually go in as a group of guys or gals and exercise the program, the software that's been generated, to see where the bugs are and what fixes are before it actually gets released as an upgrade. What are your thoughts on that? Either one, Chris or Adam.
Yeah, so I think that that goes in line with just how you want to develop in general. I don't know, do you talk about a council of, people maybe the hard part about that is getting a cross section of people that are going to come from the game from different perspectives. I know that mastering the game and having, a group of veterans that, know the game. I've had this question asked to me multiple times in my email already, so I definitely have no problem giving you an answer. It's a great idea because you guys know the holes in the game right now. The problem that it does bring is that there's no vision to what I would argue is one of the bigger problems with What If Sports, which is the user experience. To have you guys that have played this game for 15 years go back and think about having to come into this game with a new user's perspective is just hard. I mean, if you were asking me to try and do it with Hoops Dynasty, it's just impossible. Because I can give an example from Hoops Dynasty. You get into, I have friends that joined when the coronavirus thing hit and we did the promotion, and they're recruiting in Division 2. And, one of my friends found an awesome center in, out West, and loves the guy. Problem is he's a 44 red athlete. He's not going to be able to play center. He's just going to get wrecked by every other team's center. It's just those lessons that by playing the game that but he's great at everything else. So the problem is that I'm going to throw an incredible defender, an incredible athlete on him, and he's not going to do anything all day. So it's you just have to kind of think about like the great part about it is that you guys know this game so well that you can tell us all the little tips and tricks. But the problem is at the end of the day, like I think that these games are more fun when the worlds are 80% full. And it's like, you look at the Hoops Dynasty world right now that, the recruiting change for 3.0 is very polarizing. I think that in a world where these worlds were full, it's a great idea. The problem is right now that like Division II schools and Division III schools float up to D1 and recruit basically D1 level talent to D2. And then it becomes a lottery of who doesn't get, jumped on by a D1 school late in the first session or early second session of recruiting. It becomes more of an RNG exercise than an actually like, hey, I recruited this guy well. It's just more like, why did this D1 school pick my player opposed to this other person's school? Like just trying to like, I always refer to as swooping down and taking people. So it's like, I hear all the ideas. It's just a matter of like, the other problem is like when these worlds are empty, the game is completely different than it is when the world's full. So like you have to build into the game, like Chris said, you have to build resiliency into these games that we can tweak things and adjust things based on populations of worlds too, to, do we need to scale recruits differently? Do we need to, adjust the values of prestige so that when these worlds are more empty, that there's more of a fair shot and there's not as big of a, discrepancy between elite schools and non-elite schools when the worlds are so empty. So that it becomes like, a more condensed version and a fairer fight between those schools. So I guess like, I'm kind of half answering the question, but I guess like that's kind of the stuff we think about, like, that councils are definitely an important thing and a user group is definitely important. I think that like we'll do some semblance of beta or alpha or whatever we have to do when we start getting closer to developing features. But I don't necessarily want to restrict that to a small group of people. I'd rather just open it up. And, I think that's what we ended up doing in Hoops Dynasty is that there was a whole slew of people that ended up in the 3.0 like recruiting world to give feedback on how recruiting felt, things they wanted, things they didn't want, and trying to listen to the, the feedback as well. Because like it is going to feel different. I mean, anything we change is going to feel different. It's going to change how you guys have played the game for, 10 years. So, and it's going to feel weird, I think, probably too.
Well, gentlemen, we are bumping up against the hour. So unfortunately, as much fun as I've had and as much information that's been passed through tonight, I really appreciate the opportunity to get as many people on here. You guys making yourself available for this Q&A. I know the audience appreciates it, and I know those people who aren't here live with us, so to speak, but are looking at this as a recorded item on either YouTube or my personal Facebook. There's a lot of information being handed out, and we just have to remember, like it's been said earlier today, this is just a slow process. You can either have it fast and have it messed up, or have it slow and have a much better product at the end of it all. So hopefully everybody can find the patience that's necessary to get us down the road here as this thing becomes a greater and better game that we already love. But I'm sure we're going to see much more passion in the future for it when all these bugs and kinks get worked out and things get improved. I truly commend both of you for your enthusiasm. I hope it doesn't wane and you don't get beat down too much with the guys throughout the different platforms and the different worlds within each particular game. And look forward to having y'all on again sometime soon. As far as when, that's something that we can look at later on and get a chance to nail down a particular time. I know I would really enjoy doing a periodic Q&A with you guys and having yourselves available for anything that comes up, especially if it's a hot topic that shows up on the board, specifically Gridiron Dynasty. But we'll touch base and make that happen. And if you guys will make yourself available, man, I'd appreciate it. Definitely. But again, any parting words from either Adam or Chris?
You can go first, Chris, if you want.
Yeah, sure. Well, just as you said, it's at this point, it's about patience. Me and Adam are going to be transparent. We're working hard behind the scenes, and I think it'll become evident sooner if it hasn't already. We're very active and very excited about the product. And one of the reasons that I joined is just what you saw here today is the fan base and the loyalty within the user base as well. And I love going through the forums every day. But yeah, I really appreciate you having me on the show, and I'm looking forward to coming on again soon. Hopefully bringing some better and more useful insight. But thank you.
And I was just going to say, you touched, I'd agree with everything that Chris says there. We just ask for a little bit of patience as we get ramped up. In terms of open communication, like I said in my post, you can feel free to email me if you have questions or more suggestions. I've gotten a flood of just great emails and great content, and we're using that kind of stuff to make decisions, to, influence kind of where we want to be. It's kind of, Chris touched on the Sim League Live stuff. It's one of the subjects been very popular, brought up to us. And, I had to dig in and have a couple conversations with people just around what that means. And, when we ultimately do come up with a roadmap and what we're going to work on, it's not that we, if we don't choose your game right away, it's not because we aren't going to do something with it. It's because we looked at the portfolio and where we thought there was the biggest business need or the biggest growth need and went that direction. So, we have plans to do great things with all the game modes. But because of how many products there are and how vast the portfolio is, we can only, do so much at some time. So we thank you guys for everything. Thank you so much, Magic, for having us on. I look forward to coming on again as well, like Chris said. And, it's been great to get to know members of the community and, continue to, grow my passion for what is sports and the portfolio as well.
Well, again, thanks so much for coming on, and look forward to seeing you again. This is another episode of This, That, and the Other, and I've been your host, Magic. Thank you for joining.